gentlemen, welcome to the Best of Wrestling podcast. Your host, CJ Price. Look us up on Facebook, Best of Wrestling podcast. Give us a like, give us a share. And tonight we have a very special guest. His name is Remy Lavey. How you doing tonight, man?
Yo, what's going on, man? Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on Best of Wrestling podcast. It's a true pleasure. We only get the best talent because we're from the best of New England here.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I was on YouTube checking out some of the interviews. Looks like you got a nice little thing going, man. So it means a lot that you asked to have me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks. We took a long break, but we came back after that long break. Told our fans we're gonna come back, so hopefully they tune in. Let's get started
Yeah,
from the
hell yeah.
beginning here. Let's start from the beginning here. I always ask this question on my old shows. It's an icebreaker. So I want to know, what's your first memory of professional wrestling?
So from as long as I can remember, wrestling was just it was always around. My dad was really into it when I was like born. It was always on. He had the LJN figures and started buying me Hasbro's, and it's honestly been a part of my life like for as long as I can remember. But I'd say my first like real memory of like watching it and kind of like being old enough to start caring about it like by myself without my dad, and like I mean he planted the seed for sure. After that I was just like hooked. But like I'd say like 1996, like NWO and like everything that was playing out in pretty much 1996. It was like right before, all the stuff with like the screw job and Brett and Sean and yeah, Hall and Nash had just gotten to WCW. Like the NWO is kind of like my first real memory, like that I can remember now or since I started wrestling. So I would say, yeah, like 1996 was kind of when I really started watching on my own, and I just became obsessed. So my first memory is pretty much like the NWO in 1996 and WCW. And I think I really didn't get into WWF at the time until probably like 97, 90, 98. I was kind of hooked on WCW at first, but then it didn't take long to, you know, tune in. I was watching everything, flipping back and forth on Mondays, like in fifth, sixth grade, just like on the remote, flipping between Nitro and Raw, like probably like a lot of people my age did, and it was such an amazing time for pro wrestling. I just feel like I was like the perfect age uh for it to like really connect with me. And I mean, as you know, as all wrestling fans know, it was a great time. Attitude Era, Monday Night Wars, like it was awesome. It was an awesome time to be that age and be getting into wrestling.
So you got into it when the Attitude Era was just kicking off.
For sure. Yeah,
So you
that's when
got
I started
ready. You
watching.
got into a good period of wrestling right there.
Oh, dude, for sure. And there was still, like I said, like guys like Brett and Owen, like 95 is kind of looked at as like the worst year for wrestling, like that transitional point. So I kind of got to skip that a little bit, come 96, 97, like everything was pretty much full steam ahead, and it was only going to get better from there, especially up into like, the early 2000s where, I was still a huge fan.
So who were some of your favorites growing up?
I always loved Mick Foley. My dad took me to meet Mick Foley uh, in Pittsburgh, and he was just like the man. Like I loved Cactus Jack. I loved Mankind. I loved all the stuff that Mankind did with Gold Dust, and like I have early memories of like the WWF magazine with Gold Dust and Paul Bearer and Mankind, like all in the boiler room brawl and stuff. Terry Funk, love Terry Funk, love Sting, especially like the Crow Sting, that like darker character that was still a good guy. It just really spoke to me, and like a lot of the music and like stuff that I was getting really into also at that time, it kind of went hand in hand with wrestling in a lot of ways. But I felt like Sting was like really speaking to me in terms of like the look. And I mean, I loved Surfer Sting, but it wasn't until, you know, he came back as the Crow Sting to battle the NWO. Like I said, like it was just like that perfect timing. And I loved Sting, obviously, loved the Outsiders. Uh, I loved Dean Malenko and Jericho, Vampiro even. And, you know, as I got older, my taste kind of changed a little bit, but like those will always be my favorites from being like a kid. It'd be like Flair, Sting, Mick Foley, Cactus Jack. I love DX, love Shawn, love Triple H, loved Undertaker, like and ECW guys too, like RVD and Sabu and New Jack, like, you know, uh those were like the guys that I like really watched and followed and connected with, you know, as a young kid.
Sounds like you had a lot of favorites, but one of my favorites that you mentioned was Sting. He was an incredible character. He's just like the Undertaker of WCW. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Yeah, and he just looked so cool, and he like looked how I wanted to look as a kid. And I definitely you know, saw Sting before I saw the movie The Crow. That it probably wasn't too there probably wasn't too much time in between that, but like, yeah, like I saw that character and the look, the rafters, the trench coat, the baseball bat, the fact that he just stopped talking, like it was just such a good story. And like a lot of people like shit on like the blow off that him and Hogan had, the Starcade blow off, but like, you know, it doesn't even matter to me. Like the storyline was so good and they did so much cool stuff. And you got to give like Bischoff and you know give everyone their credit, even Sting and Scott Hall who came up with the Sting character. Uh, like there was just you could tell that it was just like with the NWO and Sting, there was just such good hype behind it, and like every week it seemed to live up to the hype. Whether Sting was in the rafters, or there was the fake Sting, or he was coming up from the ring, and, you know, I just loved the fact that he wasn't this like super loud, tough guy. And he was just quiet and he looked like what you would think would like a bad guy might look like, or they played with that a lot with like, you know, is Sting in the NWO? He's in the black and white. But no, he was there to basically rise from the ashes of WCW and save, you know, whatever's left. So like the fact that he was a huge babyface was like really cool to me too, because it just proved that like you can be a good guy and still be cool and like look cool, and you don't have to be a cookie cutter image of like, you know, the 80s or like the early 90s where the baby faces were like, you know, very clean cut, uh you know, kind of, you know, all followed in like a certain style or like aesthetic, and Sting just kind of like broke broke the mold on that. And I think it was super ahead of the time. And like, yeah, they were just ripping off the Crow, but Sting made that character what it was, like 100%. And just to see him still going now in AEW, all the stuff he's done with Darby, like he's not taking it easy at all, which is just like it's like, yes, that's why you were my favorite wrestler, because you really love this. And you never hear anything bad about Sting. Like it's like in terms of him, like in the locker room behind the scenes, like that's the kind of respect that I would hope to have one day, you know, and to be doing it as long as he has, uh, is amazing. So Sting is probably my number one for like specifically the Crow Sting. Wolfpack Sting was cool too, but like Crow Sting was my shit.
100% well said, man, and I totally agree. Couldn't have said it better myself. So let's skip ahead a little bit here in your life. Where was
Cool.
that moment in your head where you said, I want to do this? I want to become a pro wrestler?
So I'd say like I got really into music, and like in the my high school years, I kind of stopped watching wrestling. So this is like 2004 to like probably like 2008. I kind of was just focused on music, and I would still like check wrestling out, but like I wasn't watching it as much as I wasn't in love with it like I used to. I'd kind of grown out of it, I guess. But I still I always loved it. I shouldn't have said that. But I didn't have the same kind of you know, passion for following it that I did when I was younger. And you know, I was getting into high school and like kind of figuring out who I was. And, I was just like, all right, I got really into, playing music and learning how to play guitar. And like that kind of just, I played in bands pretty much all of my high school. And that kind of just took like priority in my life. So I wasn't watching it as closely. But then around 2008, 2009, I'd say 2009, one of my best friends now, uh, I was introduced to him. We both were going to shows. I would always see him at like local shows, and we like the same kind of music. And he's a huge wrestling fan. And basically, he kind of like put me onto the indies, started taking me to local shows. We would go to CZW in Philly. We would just like round up a group of friends and go up there, and got to see so many cool like moments and matches in the the famous ECW arena in Philly. And like that kind of just reignited my interest in like the whole side of independence and Ring of Honor. And you know I'd always known about it when I was like coming up, but it wasn't as widely available. Like the internet wasn't as popping, and I was too young to kind of be on like the message boards and stuff. So for me, getting turned on to the indies, it's like there's this whole other world outside of WWE, and I just fell in love with that whole vibe. And just from doing music and doing stuff underground and DIY and always doing stuff on a small scale, but putting a lot of passion and heart into it with my music, I think that kind of connected with me. And basically just through going to shows and going to the local promotion here, the IWC, where I trained, which has been like the indie in Pittsburgh for, I don't even know, man, like 20, maybe longer than 20 years. I can't think off the top of my head, but it's always been the Pittsburgh top indie promotion. Definitely longer than 20 years. It's been around probably since 2000, 2001. So just right around there. But I started going to shows with my friend there and found out they had a school. And me and my friend actually both just responded to the tryout. And the rest is kind of history.
So you basically go back love into wrestling, found out about wrestling school, and decided to train to be a wrestler.
Yeah, and I don't think it was ever something that I really thought that I would ever actually be able to do. So, you know, like I said with the independence, once I kind of started to meet some of the people in the scene up here and talk to people and go to shows and just kind of like feel it out, and I was like, oh, like maybe I could do this. I at least knew I wanted to try. I didn't even expect to pass my tryout, but I did. And it definitely wasn't easy. I do not have an athletic background. I just love wrestling and I love performing, and I just it was something I knew that I would be able to do by myself. It had been a while since I had really challenged myself in life at that point, and I was like at kind of a crossroads in my life where a lot of stuff was changing, and I kind of had to make a decision. I knew that if I ever wanted to try and do it, I had to just go for it. And I'm really grateful that I did. And the rest is kind of history. But if it wasn't for my friend Ty taking me to these local shows and putting me on to awesome independent wrestling, Japanese wrestling, um, stuff, smaller stuff, even smaller stuff, just locally. Like we were just going to everything for a good. Went to a bunch of WrestleManias together, and I just got back into the culture. And there were wrestlers now like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan and all these guys who I had heard about way back in the day. When I was like a kid, when they were on the indies, had now made their way to WWE, and it was just like kind of like a second coming, of it all just lining up perfectly. And there was just so much going on locally even and on the indies. And I was just hooked, like following everything, following YouTube's, went to Tournament of Death 2009. Like we were just going to any show we could. And
You
I
were
was just
hooked. You
meeting,
were hooked.
dude, I was totally hooked, but specifically, definitely on wrestling, but specifically on the indies. Like it was like a whole new world. So, I I owe that all to my boy Ty Dawson. So shout outs King T.
So you mentioned that you got into music a little bit in high school, and if I'm not mistaken, you're a part of a band now, correct?
Yeah, so in high school, I did a band. I did two bands kind of simultaneously. One was kind of more like just like rock, emo type stuff, and the other one was like metalcore, deathcore, kind of MySpace. All that stuff was going on at the same time, so it kind of all lined up with that. I don't know how familiar you are with that kind of scene, but yeah, this is like 2004. Starting my first high school bands, like. Both were awful at first, but we figured it out pretty quickly just because, it was kind of we all really wanted to be in a band, like all of us together, and it was this small group of friends that kind of came together through starting these bands and stuff. So, at first it was rough. It was not good, but yeah, that was, my life from high school up until 2013 or so, where I was touring and doing stuff on the East Coast. We were going to Canada, putting records out and recording. Yeah, that was my life before wrestling, and I've played with some bands since then, and I filled in and I've done some cool stuff. But just within this last year, myself, and my roommate, uh, who was also in my band in high school, my metal band, Belie My Burial. We've been working on new music, just me and him. We really got serious with it over the pandemic, and uh, got to do some cool stuff with our old band. Like we put like a vinyl out that had all of our old music on, like a vinyl record. We had never gotten to do that, which was pretty cool. And now we're kind of focusing into this, putting out this new project, which hopefully we're about to send it off, and hopefully a couple months, and everyone will get to hear it. But uh, yeah, man, wrestling and music are kind of just like the two things that I've
I
always
was gonna say that. Would you say
needed.
that music and wrestling go together, right?
100%. And doing like DIY underground hardcore metal, that whole grind, and I think that if I hadn't had done that stuff before getting into wrestling, I think I would have had it would have been more like a culture shock. But I think because of that, and because I was on stage and I was used to performing, I was used to playing in front of a lot of people. I was used to playing in front of no one, which is very similar with wrestling, like, especially when you first start. I was used to being in a van with a bunch of other, sweaty dudes for hours, and you show up and you do your thing, and sometimes it's awesome and sometimes it sucks. So I think doing all that kind of has really helped me, like, you know, get started just with traveling and promoting myself and merchandise and networking. And I think that background, low key, really helped me. I know for sure it did. Just it kind of just helped me like settle in once I graduated from training and from the IWC school. Uh, that background really helped me kind of like find my way, and network and travel and make a lot of awesome friends and relationships. And without that, I think I would have had a lot harder of a time, like being comfortable, especially like just performing in front of a crowd.
So, for those people that are watching right now that don't know who you are, don't know who Remy Lavey is, and explain the character and what it's about.
So when I started, like I kind of, and everyone says this, so it might sound cliche, but whatever. They always say like the best gimmicks are yourself turned all the way up. So when I first started, I was kind of like doing a tag team, and we were called the Night Riders, and it was myself and Sam Cassidy. Shout out Sam Cassidy. He's since retired. Uh, and we were kind of doing like an 80s, like based on the 80s TV show Knight Rider. We kind of had this like 80s throwback kind of synth wave, kind of, retro vibe. It was like a retro style kind of tag team, but it was like Pretty Boy, Babyface. And from that, I kind of was just doing my goth thing, just kind of being me, the dude from the bands, dude that was into music, the dude that's a little mysterious or spooky. And I don't think it was really until we got to do the faction that I've been a part of now for a while, called the Culmination. Uh, Once that kind of came together, 2016, I feel like I kind of was able to really turn up the spookiness and kind of the occult and spooky mind games uh, part of my character, you know. And I've never had like a super gimmick. Like I really am just always trying to be me to the max. You know what, like 13-year-old me would think was really cool. We're going back to like what I was talking about Sting, and like Sting was just Sting, but he had this great story that developed his character. And I think that like great wrestlers progress through the years and they kind of let the stories and the matches shape who they are, you know, year to year, and who like how they evolve. So I'm at a point now with my character where I'm really just trying to bring all of these things that I like from outside of wrestling and from in wrestling, all my wrestling influences, but also stuff from, movies and stuff from comic books and stuff from music and all this stuff that I'm really influenced by, and I'm trying to kind of bring all these things together, not rip anything off, but at the same time, put all these influences into a big melting pot and try and do my own thing with it. So as far as as the character of Remy Lavey, uh, he's always kind of battling himself. And not only is that a character, but I think that's something that's just very true in my actual day-to-day life and wrestling careers. I feel like I'm always my biggest obstacle, like I'm kind of always at battle and at war with myself. Wrestling kind of saved me from going down, a bad path, whether it would be getting myself in trouble or just kind of a mediocre, boring, normal life, which I've known since I was a little kid that I never wanted. So I think the best way to sum it up is the character of Remy Lavey is, one that is always looking to evolve, may have, dabbled in some dark things, but at the end of the day, wrestling has given me a purpose, and that's kind of why I do it and why I fight. It's kind of fate almost. And whether I'm at war with myself or battling myself or my own demons, when I step in the ring, it's it's the best thing in the world. It's a dream come true.
So a couple more questions here, Mr. LeVay, before I let you go. If there's
Cool.
one lesson that you learned in professional wrestling that you take on into your personal life, what would that be?
I think wrestling really taught me like how important it is to work, like how important it is working with other people, no matter who they are, what they're into. Like one of my favorite things about wrestling is just how diverse professional wrestling is. And you have so many people now more than ever, and especially represented on the indies, that are from, all walks of life. And I believe that no matter who you are, there is a place for you in professional wrestling. Anyone that wants to be involved, should be involved. And you can find a place in pro wrestling. And the lessons that I learned just from working with other people, obviously, like you're working with someone, you're putting your life in their hands and vice versa. And that kind of safety and trust and communication has really helped me outside of wrestling to be patient with people, uh, and to really try and work with them and hear their ideas out and hear what they have to say. It's really easy to kind of just overload someone with all your ideas, but a
I
good
totally
match.
agree with you, man. Sorry to cut you off there.
No.
But wrestling is if it's a one-on-one, it's a two-person sport, not one. I read
100%.
somewhere, I think it was on Angry Wrestling Bet. Yes, you're looking to get yourself over, but you also want to get your opponent over as well.
Exactly.
But go
Exactly.
ahead.
And, it's like you got to make each other look good, to put on the best possible match. And when you, when you give that trust and you give that respect and you're met with the same coming back, it just makes you appreciate the actual kind of like behind the scenes of what goes on into wrestling. And so many different people with so many different ideas and creative minds, like it's really inspiring most of the time and will get me really excited. Like if someone has a really cool idea, even if it's not my idea, like fuck it, like it's a good idea, let's do it. So I've really learned a lot about just working with other people and trying to work with someone and not just worry about yourself, and making sure you look good and making sure your shit looks good. Like it's definitely taught me patience and communication for sure.
That's a great way to put it, my friend. So one last question before I let you go here. What are
Cool.
you looking to get out of this business? Like, what's your end goal?
I mean, I've been doing it for a while now, so uh, honestly, the end goal is just to be able to do this as long as possible. I think I had a lot of specific goals when I first started, and it's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to compare yourself to others in this business and feel like maybe you're uh, you're not doing the right thing or that you're getting left behind. I think as wrestlers or creatives, no matter what you're doing, like I think we've all dealt with that at some point on some level. And it's really easy to let that kind of like throw you off your path. But at the end of the day, it's your path. And my path has just been all about, meeting new people, getting better in and out of the ring, making sure people know who Remy Lavey is, and if I can sell some merch at the same time, cool. I've been very grateful that doing things on a mostly underground level and still just kind of grinding it out on the indies. Like I have so many awesome people supporting me all the time. And like I said, it's easy to lose sight of that or get caught up in what the other guy's doing. And I think just as a person, I've grown a lot to kind of not worry about that stuff as much in terms of if I don't make it to here, it's a failure. I have small certain goals, specific goals, and right now I'm kind of trying to get my shit together and really putting an effort to get back in shape and get healthy physically, mentally, so that I can really you know give myself a little kick in the ass here going into the end of the year and next year to reestablish some goals, travel a little bit more outside of my comfort zone, maybe send out those emails that I've been putting off to try and really, pop up on some places. But I'm more focused on just doing what I got going on right now. Wrestling in West Virginia, wrestling in PA, wrestling in Ohio, uh, kind of in this tri-state area. And I've had an insanely busy year. I didn't think it was going to be this busy, but the schedule and the grind and the passion, uh, it's all there all the time. It's definitely a challenge sometimes, but the main goal is to just you know refocus and keep going as hard as possible, so that next year and the year after that, and for as many more years as I got. Uh, I just want to be able to do this as long as I can, man. It's stuff like this podcast, talking to people, meeting new people, uh, making that connection through wrestling. Uh, it's amazing, and I think that's the best thing about pro wrestling is no matter what you're about or what you're into or where you come from, if you're into pro wrestling, like we're going to be able to, we have a connection. We're going to be able to talk about something and both feel that. So just like this interview and just like everyone that loves pro wrestling and specifically independent pro wrestling, uh, you know, the goal is to just be able to be my best for those people and for myself and keep learning. Another great thing about pro wrestling is you're always learning. So those goals are, kind of coming back into focus as I try and get myself back in great shape and kind of bring some cool new stuff, whether it's the music or the wrestling stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff in the pipeline that I've been working really hard on. So just gotta be self-disciplined and follow through on these things. But it feels like the right time to do that. I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I'm ready to kind of grab it by the balls and refocus. And that's where I'm at, man. Just want to be able to keep doing this as long as I can. And I've already gotten to do so much cool stuff that if you would have told me, like we were talking about in the beginning of this interview, if you would have told me when I was in 1996 watching this thing, if you would have told me that one day, I'd be living my dream, I wouldn't have been able to believe it. So, I'm just so thankful for the business and for all the wonderful people that it's put in my life and all the opportunities it's given me to connect with people.
So one last thing, Mr. Lavey, you want to promote any social media or anything else that you would like to plug? Go right ahead.
For sure. At Remy Lavey on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Just search Remy Lavey, RemyLavey. I'm on Twitter at Remy Lavey. You can follow Subcell Cult, SUBCELL. That's myself and my boy Adam. Shout out Wells. It's our new band. We should have some new music coming within the end of the year. I'm very excited about it. We've been working super hard on it. Self-produced. We've done everything here. Make sure to check out RSW, Real Shoot Wrestling, IWC, 2PW, some of the best local promotions here that I've had the privilege to be able to work for. They're keeping me booked and busy and giving me great matches. Make sure you follow them and make sure you follow this podcast.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And we wish you the best of luck in your career. We really appreciate you coming on the show on the Best of Wrestling podcast. And good luck with everything in your life, my friend.
And likewise, man, I really appreciate it. I'll share this.
Best of Wrestling podcast, man. Go look us up on Facebook and like us on YouTube. Thanks. Have a good night, man.
You too, brother. Thank you.